Welcome to this month's live Ask Me Anything. I've started doing these because I just get so many questions from all sources between YouTube and email and my website and Instagram that I just don't have time to answer them all. And so this is my way of trying to answer as many questions as possible for people. So I'll be looking for people who show up and chatting your questions, but I have a list of questions here prepared in the meantime. If there's nobody on who has questions or while we're waiting for somebody to have a question. So first question is from Gene. Gene was wondering why my original Curfboard review and then my customizing article and video gave different instructions to provide more lean for the Curfboard. And the answer to that, Gene, is simply that I didn't know about wedging and de-wedging the Curfboard when I made my review. And then I learned later. But your real question is, how do you get more lean out of the Curfboard? So it's very simple. Number one, you want to de-wedge the front. Let me go back to my screen here so I can. So de-wedging means this is de-wedged. If it were wedged, it would mean you'd have the thicker part of that wedge riser on the back bolts. But de-wedged means you have the thicker part of the riser on the front. So if you want to give the Curfboard more lean and eliminate that hitch that I talk about in my review, de-wedge the Curfboard by an angle of between 8 and 12 degrees, and then add the Waterborne rail adapter to the rear. I don't have that on this one, but that's those two things, and you will have a phenomenal Curfboard ride that leans very, very well, and that leans. Here, I just don't want to drop this Curfboard here. It will lean side to side without any hitch, like I talk about in my review. So that's the answer to that. And I wish Curfboard did a better job of educating people because it really does transform that truck. And I really wish I would have known about that before I did my review because like I said, it fixes all of the issues that I had with it. And so my review would have been much different. So I still need to do an update on that, but also Curfboard is starting to do some more education on that. In fact, if you're subscribed to their mailing list, you'll know that just not too long ago, maybe a month ago, they sent an email where they're giving people an upgrade package with wedge risers and stuff and instructions on how to do that. So I think that's good on Curfboard. All right, that answers that one. Next question is David says, I'm interested in getting a SmoothStar deck for my Meraki truck set. I'm 6'4", my stance width is 16 inches. Come from a skateboarding background. The deep concave is super appealing, but there's no information on the SmoothStar site about their wheelbase length. Do you have any info on wheelbase length for the Toledo and Manta array? Well, my answer to that is, if you're asking me, I would not recommend that anybody get a SmoothStar deck. And this is kind of the reality for me. If you're asking me, if you buy a SmoothStar complete, you're really kind of just paying for a $300 front truck, because I privately get reports fairly frequently from people who their SmoothStar decks will just snap in half. It's cheap. I think it's 5-layer birch, whereas your Carvers and your Yows are 7-ply maple. So they're just not built well. Personally, it's not a feel that I like. I know that there's a lot of people that like them. That's just purely personal preference. But and I don't know that there's any way to buy those decks separately anyway. So I think that's kind of a moot point if you're asking me. And I would not recommend that anybody buy a SmoothStar deck separately for any reason, but that is just me. Okay, so that answers that. Now, I should get my glasses on here. I'm looking into Tyler asks, I'm looking into the Coxos 31-inch deck and the Carver 30.75-inch Channel Islands Happy deck. Would these decks both be effective at higher performance maneuvers such as snaps and riding in bowls? Would the Fishtail and the Coxos affect snapping? Is the Coxos concave enough?
Please forgive me for so many questions. That's what we're here for. And I'm going to I'm familiar with that Coxos deck, but I just, and I'm probably not pronouncing it right, like I mispronounce everything, but let me take just a refresher look at this deck here. Yao has updated some of their Surfskate since I was here. Okay, so I'm looking at this Yao Coxos deck. Looking at the Concave. Yeah, just as I suspected. Okay, so all right, let me start there. Tyler has more questions, but let me start there. Yeah. I would say, first of all, as with any deck, you'll hear the phrase, it's not the Indian, or it's not the arrow, it's the Indian, meaning it's not any great rider can make any deck work. So either of those decks would work fine for bull riding and advanced maneuvers, but I wouldn't recommend them for that. I think that you want something, personally, if you're wanting high performance riding bowls, I'd go with something a little bit more concave. Like maybe with Carver, it would be like that Yago Skinny Goat, or I don't know, I'd have to go look at the lineup. But so bottom line is, you could ride either of those for what you're saying, but I personally don't think that they're ideal for that. Tyler then says, I currently own the Penny Highline Surfskate, but would like to try a different deck with the Waterborne surf system. Specifically, I'd like something with a 16 to 18-inch wheelbase and a 30 to 32-inch length. Are there any concerns with either of these decks working with the Waterborne system? Absolutely not, Tyler. The only concern on any system would be really if it's too narrow of a wheelbase for your stance width. But what you're describing is you're not going to have any issues with that at all. And if you have any questions, chat them here. Mr. J says, any updates on new products? Those, I can't see what you're saying. Those sweet new wheels, there's a heart that's covering that word. I think it says sweet. Sweet new wheels and that enormous deck. Yeah. All right, cool. So, gosh, you got anybody who's on the inside has heard me say this so many times, how it's such a nightmare dealing with my manufacturer and developing new wheels. I submitted my drawings. I repeated this so many times, but I submitted my drawings to my manufacturer in June of 2022 for those wheels. So I'm 2 years and a lot of money into development. And I submitted my order for them on April 17th, and I was hoping to have them by the end of May. They've been giving me like 4 to 6 week turnarounds recently. But they've poured them. They were supposed to have printed them last week, and I was hoping they were going to ship them last week, but I haven't heard anything. So at this point, I'm going to say best case scenario, I'll have them by the end of this week. And if not, then should be, the beginning of next week, because they are poured and should be printed and should be going to packaging and shipping here soon. So a week or two on the wheels. Oh man, it's been a nightmare. And then the enormous deck. So what we're doing on the 56-inch Waterborne Surfskate Love XL is Waterborne is going to sell those. And we just ordered our final prototype and placed an order for our minimum batch of 100. And so what we're going to do is, and our manufacturer actually forced us to put down half for a minimum order quantity before they would even move forward, because we've gone through 3 rounds of iterations on the prototypes. And so anyway, so we dropped half down for a a minimum quantity, 100 of those. And we'll have to get the final prototype first, which I would hope to have within 2 to 3 weeks, at which point give us a week or two to make a video and do whatever we got to do. So bottom line is, long and short of it, on that Waterborne XL, I would hope to be launching that by the end of June is my hope. And then Funking It Up asks, are you still mainly riding long wheelbases exclusively? Although I got to admit, I got myself a new LDP setup recently. It's a G-Bomb bracket board. Well, G-Bomb actually just sells rocket boards, but he's got it on his website. So I've actually been doing a bit of LDP lately, getting some distance. But yeah, if I'm on a surf skate lately, it's exclusively the longer wheelbases. It's all I'm interested in. Michael Sosi asks, what about bigger wheels like the orangutan Caguamas? I'm not sure what your question is, Michael. Are you asking if you can use them on a surf skate? Give me some clarification on your question there. All right, let me, while you're giving me some clarification, let me read my next question here. John Daly, or sorry, I shouldn't be giving full names here. Sorry. John asks, I combine Gullwing 2 trucks with Waterborne surf trucks. Do you think combining them is okay? I mean, listen, we all got my glasses are all skewed here. We all got our things, and it's all a personal preference. So who am I to tell anybody how to ride? But I personally would never do that. I personally don't even like the feel of the Gullwing sidewinders. I think that they're just really floppy. You don't get a lot of rebound. And when you have both trucks that are the same, you have that effect where you get lean, but you don't get the thrust from the stable rear truck. And so I can only imagine what it would feel like to add a Gullwing to a Waterborne surf adapter. I think that would be just outrageously too much motion and wouldn't feel good at all. But who am I? That's me. So that's my answer to that question. So Michael, you were asking, what about if we put longer wheels on it on the Waterborne? We're going to put my 70 millimeter wheels. The danger with it is wheel bite, Michael. And we're going, this is a 10 ply deck, and the wheel wells are 7 layers thick in that to prevent wheel. Well, as I say it out loud, I mean, you could obviously add risers, but the stock complete is going to come with 70 millimeter wheels, and very deep wheel wells to prevent wheel bite. And you for sure will get wheel bite on bigger wheels if you don't add risers, would be my answer to that question. Funking It Up asks, have you seen the Pantheon Shuriken Surfskate deck? I have indeed, and I've had a personal conversation with Jeff Vine, the owner of Pantheon. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. I don't think I am, because it's not like it's any big secret. But first of all, he's going to be getting me. I'm going to be paying for them. But as soon as he had like 20 when he launched, and he ran out of stock in like 2 days. And so he's promised me the next 2 off the top for me. I'm going to take one for me, and then I'm going to send one to my team riders. And so we're going to get a review of that going. But also, and Jeff, forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn here, but Jeff's intention is to buy the new colored Carver CX trucks and put completes together with his deck and colored Carver CX trucks and my wheels. And so we're working on that behind the scenes. So my friend Gavin Conti, I've known about this project for honestly like a year, because Gavin Conti is very close friends with Jeff, and he's been helping Jeff develop this for, I think, honestly, it's been a good while. It's maybe even as much as a year. So I've been getting these glimpses, and that channel through the middle of it was actually Gavin's idea to add some torsional flex to it, and it also adds a nice convenient carrying handle. But it looks cool, and I'm excited to ride it and review it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Um, Asha, forgive me, says, love your videos. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate that. I could not do any of this without your support. So thank you very much. Michael says, love your wheels. Thank you, Michael. That's great to hear. Mr. J says torsion. Did I not say torsional flex right? What did I say? I meant to say torsional flex. Okay. I think Funking It Up says it's a brutal business. Oh, yes, it is. Yep, it sure is. It sure is. You have to be here for love and passion. Another question from Funking It Up. Have you tried any old school 1980s style skateboard decks? They often come in 10-inch directional boards with wide tails. I haven't, but I know exactly what you're talking about, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think they're perfect Surfskate specs. And you may have seen too, my team writer David recently dropped a review of that crooked deck, and that's also a very wide profile and really great for surf skates. Clayton asks, have you ever had wheels stuck on? Yes, Clayton. Almost the new. Well, actually, I said okay. I was going to say something that I take it back. I personally, pretty much every Carver I've ever had will get bearings stuck on them, and it's a pain in the butt. And you got to be really careful, because the only way that I've been able to figure out how to do it is I just use a flathead screwdriver. But you got to be careful, because if you're hitting those, here's a bearing. So if you're getting in there, right, and you're trying to give this a visual here, if you're trying to get between your axle and your bearing to pop it out, and you hit your shield, your bearing shield, you're going to damage your bearings. So you got to be really, really delicate. But I just very delicately will get a wedge, a flathead screwdriver, and try to just kind of pry it out as gently, as carefully as possible. But I don't know why that happens, but it's always Carver specifically. I don't have that on any other. And Clayton, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing you've had that on a Carver too. But yeah, all the time, and that's my solution. Mr. J says, how do you feel about torsion tails? Do you mean like a tail that would flex downward like this, like the Waterborne carbon models that I reviewed and talk about that? Oh, you're talking about, Mr. J, are you talking about the tail bracket on my LDP setup? If so, it's great. I mean, it's a completely different experience. Going from Surfskate to LDP, you don't get the lean. And so I had a couple experiences, Mr. J, where like my first ride out where I'm not used to your back wheel can slide out of you a lot on that one bracket board that I'm riding. And I had come down a little bit of a hill, and then I had to come around it, and there were some bikers coming around the path. So I had to stay on my side and go to make a pretty tight turn, and my back wheel slid out unexpectedly, and that was not comfortable. So it's a bit of an adjustment going from Surfskate to LDP, but it's a totally different ride. And what I fell in love with surf skating from the beginning was what I call it is just the ride that never ends. I came from a longboard. It was very simple for me. I was pushing on my foot on a longboard on the ground, and then I got on a surf skate and I didn't have to push. So I was like, oh, it's the ride that never ends. And LDP is like that times 10, and you can go a lot further. And so it's that same feel that got me into longboarding and surf skating in the first place. So I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really happy to have it as part of my quiver. Clayton says, following up on the bearings, I bought some new wheels and bearings, but can't seem to get the wheels off. Now you're confusing me. Does that mean you have bearings stuck inside the wheels, or the bearings are stuck on the axle? If the bearings are stuck on the axle, it's
very carefully use a flathead screwdriver to pry them off. If the wheels are stuck, or if your bearings are stuck in the wheels, use the wheel axle itself to pull those off. Manuel Rudart or Manuel asks, have you tried 75 millimeter wheels on Surfskate? How do you like it? Yeah, I've tried big wheels on a Surfskate, and it's fun, but they're very heavy. You know, if I were going to ride bigger than 70, I'd probably want to be on an LDP setup. It just becomes, you get to 75, and there's a lot of guys out there who are riding really big wheels. There's a guy, Matthew, in Colorado, who's really big on the big wheels. He's posting on the forums all the time. And they're great for rough surfaces, long distances. They're just obviously heavy and, you know, bulkier and harder to pump. So it's not my jam personally, but yeah, I have tried them, and it's fun and it's interesting. I'm just reading more questions here. Funking it up, more questions. Is the Carver CX still your main truck? And have you ever tried dewedging the rear for increased pumping efficiency? You know, it is when I'm on the shorter boards, but when I'm on these long boards, I'm exclusively on the Waterborne surf adapter. And that's number one, because the rail adapter is indispensable on them, and I could use a different front truck, but my experience has been that the Waterborne works best, and I like it best on these long boards. And so I've been mostly on a Waterborne. I change out the bushing to get a harder riptide bushing. I go with the 97.5A. The stock Waterborne bushing is too floppy and it has too deep dive of a lean for me. But with that riptide bushing, it really fixes that for me. But so if I'm not on a longboard, yeah, I'm on a CX, and I have not tried dewedging the rear, and sounds like I should try that. Clayton asks, I currently ride a C7 and started with just normal longboards. Is there anything you think I should try out, different brands? I mean, you'd have to give me more context, Clayton. I would never make a recommendation in a vacuum like that. It depends on what you want to do. Do we want to go short distance, long distance? Do we want to do snaps and slides? Do we want to do bull riding? Or you just wanted to do more kind of a long distance pumping feel? There's so many factors that go into it. But I mean, my short answer is, if you love it, then hell yeah. Like, the more boards in your quiver, the better. Like this is the cool thing about surf skating, you know, and I think the LDP world is the same. People who get really deep into LDP and surf skating tend to really get into customizing, because, you know, a skateboard is kind of a skateboard. I mean, yeah, there's things you can do to upgrade, but they're by and large kind of the same. But you get into surf skating and there's so many different factors, all of which influence your ride so dramatically, that it's just so much, in my opinion, it's just so much fun to have a lot of different rides to pull from for different purposes and different feels. So I'm all about getting more, but, you know, it just depends on budget and how much time you're putting into it. Red Blooded Sky says, great to see you again. Thank you. Are you into loaded flexi longboards, like they're dancing longboards? I've seen them, but I've never tried them. And they might be worth trying on a Surfskate truck, honestly. Clayton says, I mainly just cruise, not many tricks. Then yeah, I mean, you ought to try a CX, you ought to try a Meraki, you ought to try a Waterborne surf adapter, and you ought to experiment with different decks with different wheelbases. If you have the budget and if you're going to spend the time. Mr. J, which XL deck is your favorite so far? It is the Sector. Sector 9 made 2 vintage longboards that they called the Luke Nosewalker. And I don't know why they called them, because they're different. One of them is 55 inches long, and it has an upturned nose and tail. And that's the most common one that you'll see out there if you're poking around on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. The other one is 57 inches long, and it's totally flat. And of those two, my favorite of all, I've tried over, it's like over 25 at this point that are over the length of 50 inches. And out of all of them, far and away, that Sector 9 flat 57 incher is my favorite one. And so when I created the Waterborne XL with Pat, basically I'm recreating that feel with some minor modifications. I'm taking everything I learned to put together my ideal deck, but that's the main one that I'm modeling after. So if you can find an old Sector 9 Luke nose walker, if you can find the ones that have the upturned nose and tail, great. And they also have a concave to them. And if you can find one, that's great. I don't like it nearly as much as the flat one. But if you can find that flat, I've only been able to find one. I found 4 of those other ones. Those are, like I say, the easiest to find relatively out of all the stuff that I found. But that flat one I've only found that one. But if you can find it, it is worth its weight in gold. So, and as you're poking around on eBay and Facebook Marketplace, you want to look for those vintage Sector 9 Luke nose walkers. But it's hard to search for them because people don't know what they're called. People don't even know that they're Sector 9s. Like they'll be just listed under a longboard, or I've even found one listed under skateboard, right? So you have to dig deep to find them, but they're out there. Red Blooded Sky says, what are your thoughts on White Shark decks? They're not my jam. And that's just personal preference. Anybody who knows Mark the Landlocked Surfer knows that he's a huge fan of them. It's just not my style of riding. They're very stiff, like skateboard decks, and I much prefer this torsional flex of Soulboardies and Abion decks, and even Carvers and Yows have some torsional flex to them that you don't get on those. I also, for me personally, I'm not a big fan of the front foot concave. The pocket is not intuitive to me, but that's my take. If you're doing just kind of mellow cruising like I do, those decks have very deep concave. There's a lot of bite to them. There's for your feet. There's a locked in feel to those for high performance riding. So if you're just a basic cruiser, I don't think that they're going to be your jam. If you're going to be doing some bull riding, things like that, then you might want to check them out. That's my bottom line on those. Clayton says, just looking for anything with a similar, possibly even better surfing feel. Clayton, if you're coming from a C7 and if you've never tried a Yao Meraki, then I recommend you try that Yao Meraki, because I still remember my first experience. I went from, I don't remember, if I recall right, I went from Carver CX first. My next one was the Green Room with C7. My next one after that was a Swell Tech. And then I think my next one after that was a Yao, but it was actually, I think, the old S5, not the Meraki. But anyway, my point being, I vividly remember the first time I stepped onto a Yao and a SmoothStar after being on a Carver CX and Carver C7 and was blown away by the difference. So highly recommend grab a Meraki, Clayton. But Yaos to me are like, I like their decks and I like the front truck, but I don't like the wheels, bushings, pivot cups. So, if it were me and you knew what you were doing, I would build out a Yao custom. I wouldn't buy a Yao complete. I'd buy a front truck and then piece it together, but that's just me. Red Blooded Sky, any chance you would offer Surfskate training sessions in Utah? No, because I just don't have time. I'm actually, I have a $19 course for non-surfer beginners on my website. and I don't really do much to market it other than it just being on the site and whatever organic traffic it gets, and actually does really, really well. And my point being, I think it's a great course, but that's not my point. My point is that I feel like there's actually a very big demand for tutorials in this space, and one-on-one coaching would be especially beneficial, but I personally just don't have the time to do it. What I'd love to see is, so I've been here in St. George. I don't know where you are, if you're in Utah, but I've been in St. George for 3.5 years skating alone. And so I'd love to at least have, a skate group, some people to skate with would be great, but that would be my place to start. Your daily random asks, for commuting on bike paths, CX, C7, or Yow, which one is easier to keep momentum? For me, it would be a toss-up between the C7 and the CX. The C7, my take on the C7 is it's kind of sluggish off the line, meaning if you're at a dead standstill and you're trying to start pumping, that C7 is, for me, much harder to start than like the Meraki or SmoothStar. But once you get the C7 moving, it really pulls you forward. It has a lot of forward momentum, probably more so than the CX. But I think that they're similar, the CX and the C7. The Meraki is great, but to me, it's less forward momentum. It's like riding a bike in a lower gear a little bit more so compared to the CX and Meraki. Yes, Mr. J, you do want a nose walker so bad. Keep looking for them. They're fantastic. Is it Red Blooded Sky asks, is it possible for the Surfskate Festival in Carvers to be announced earlier? Missed this year's for a few days. So what we're going to do on that is we've been doing them April and October, and we decided that we're going to just do them once a year now in April. The October event was fine. It was a little bit lower than the others, and it's a really great event. We're having a blast doing it, and it's going really well, but it's just a lot of work for the hosts and the sponsors to do all that work twice a year. And so what we really want to do is make it, a big enough thing where it's kind of a destination thing every year, hopefully. And so my hope is that making it once a year will make it more of an event as opposed to twice a year. And then it'll be kind of a standard thing where it's every April. But yeah, I hear you, and we'll get it out. We'll start, I'll tell Brian at Status this, and we'll start promoting it maybe 2 or 3 months in advance next April. So stay tuned for that. Manuel says, have you a setup for long distance you like a lot under 40 inches? No, because if I'm going to go long distance, I'm going to go longer than that. The only two, let's see, under 40 inches. I think the two closest to that would be my Carver Tyler 777 or my Yow. What is it? The old Malibu, I think. And they're fine, but after experiencing these 50-inch plus ones, like 40 inches doesn't even seem, 40 inches seems short to me now. So no, I don't really have any recommendations for you for decks that are under 40 inches, good for low DP, but good with flex. I don't. Red Blooded Sky, would a SmoothStar be any improvement over Yow Meraki trucks? Is it really worth it? It's personal preference. For me, if I have no use for a SmoothStar thruster as a non-surfer. It's like riding a bike in first gear. It doesn't have forward momentum, which means that it's best used in small areas, cone drills and yeah, of course, online you're going to see people riding in bowls and doing everything with it. But so
I can't say whether the SmoothStar thruster is better than the Meraki. It just depends on your personal preference and feel. I would say that if you're a surfer, you may think that the SmoothStar Thruster D is an improvement over the Meraki. Most surfers that I've talked to agree with that. My team rider Ace, 20-year surfer, prefers the. I think out of everything he's tried, he probably would say he prefers the SmoothStar Thruster D the best in terms of the most pure surf feeling. But if you're a non-surfer, I personally never ride a SmoothStar and I have no use for it. So it just depends on your purposes. Paul asked what happened to your pinky finger. So I have a couple of videos where I talk about this, Paul, but this is all part of my surf skating story. This is embarrassing because it was me being stupid. But back when I got into longboarding, I didn't know what I was doing. I was a newbie, and I got into a bad situation where I shouldn't have been doing, and I lost control on a hill. Long story, and I ended up crashing, and I snapped this finger like right off at that pinky, and I ended up having 2 pins in it for 6 weeks. And so it's just always going to be like this forever. That's what I got for the rest of my life. So, and that was on a longboard. And had I been on a surf skate, there would have been no problem. I would have had total control. And so it's part of my surf skating journey, because one of the big things that I loved about a surf skate was I had instant control. I had no interest in doing the downhill longboarding thing. That was just a mistake, and I got out of control, and it was totally stupid mistake. But so anyway, Paul, I wrecked on a longboard, which is part of why I got hooked on surf skates, because surf skates give me a lot more control and safety. Funking it up. Have you seen the C7 clone from Globe Skateboards, magnesium with hollow axles? I have indeed. I'm not a fan of it all. I rode it one time and then went in my junk pile. That's my take. It has this weird slip out feel to it on the rails. It's like you lean on a rail and then you feel like you're slipping out to the side. And so I didn't like the deck at all. I've heard a couple reports from other guys liking it, but it's not my thing. And it's why you haven't seen a review of it, because anymore, my take is kind of, if I don't like something, I honestly don't really want to do a review. I'll talk about it in kind of a more private setting like this. But so I don't know if I'll ever even do a review of that. But long and short of it, I think it's a inferior clone. I'm not a big fan of the clone thing anyway. I don't have a lot of respect for it. So whatever, that's just me, personal opinion. Brad says, are you still doing any transition riding, working on a park wheel? No, Brad, I haven't been, ever since I got into these longboards. It's all I want to do. I haven't been in a bowl for a good while. I need to, but these longboards are just too much fun. Michael, have you rode the SmoothStar Dolphin Cruiser? I have not. Whirlybird, have you tried CX or C5 on Waterborne before? My friend is a coastal drifter with C5 trucks mounted on a Waterborne system. It feels amazing. Makes me actually consider a board that size. You know, my friend Josh has been texting me. Is that your friend, Josh? Are we talking about the same guy, Josh, that has that set up? Is he your friend too? Because he texted me that he was trying this out and he loved it. I haven't tried it. Yeah. Oh, cool. Right on. Yeah. So you're friends with Josh. Cool. Yeah. Josh and I text all the time. Bottom line is I haven't tried it, but sounds like I should. But you know what I'm really jazzed about? Give me just a second here. I'm going to show you guys something I'm excited about. Okay, so
I recently got me the new Surf Rider. Have you guys heard of the new Surf Rider? This is it's very narrow deck because it's C5 trucks that they chopped down and made them narrow. And of course, what did I do with it? This Surf Rider is really fun and I recommend it, but I immediately took them off and put it on a 53-inch long longboard. And it's interesting because this is one that had been in the boneyard for one reason. It was too narrow for the typical Surfskate trucks. But when I got these C5s, I was like, I got to try these on a longboard, and it's so much fun. And the real principle here is I hear there's a few guys out here who have been talking about this, but I think one of the trends we're going to see, and something I recommend you try, is narrower hangers. It really changes the ride, and it's unique and interesting. Sorry, I've got an air bubble here, but it actually makes those C5s. The C5s are low to the ground, and as a result, they don't have that same height as the CX, and as a result, they're harder to pump than the CX. But when you narrow those hangers, it actually makes it easier to pump. And so these C5 narrows on this longboard is actually really a lot of fun, but also recommend the Surf Rider just, in and of itself, but also get it because you get the narrower trucks and you can play around with those narrow trucks. And I've even, I asked Greg Falk at Carver what it would take to get them to chop down a CX and C7 for me too. I want to try that too. I haven't heard back, but that would be cool. But, and I know there's a guy out there, Nate Ross, look him up on Instagram. He's been talking about this a lot. He's been putting 4-inch hangers on Merakis and loving it. But that narrow hanger is a very unique, interesting feel, opens up a new feel and new possibilities, and highly recommend playing around with it. Mr. J says, ever tried doing double surf adapters? No, I would never do that because, the whole magic of the surf skate is the combination of the stable rear with a rotating front. And if you don't have a stable rear, it's like a handboards. You don't get that same thrust that you do. So that's not something I would never, ever try. Okay, so that's all. Let me go back to some more questions I have in my inbox here that have been waiting. I have a question about that 4-inch wheel offset on the Avion skateboards. My wheelbase is 15 inches, so that mean I need a 19-inch wheelbase on the Avion system. I'm assuming that this person means their stance width is 15 inches, so you need a 19-inch wheelbase on the Avion. Yes, that is correct. So if you have a 15-inch stance width as measured between your inner feet and your natural stance width, then you want to have a wheelbase on your deck as measured between the inner bolt holes that is at least 19 inches long. And that will give you that stance width without jackknifing that front truck is the point of that. Okay, Hayward, this was a good question. I wanted to talk about this. First of all, he asks, I'd like to know if the Carver CX original pivot cups will fit CX clone trucks like the MKX and the Mindless. I have no idea, and I don't care because I'm not big on those clones, but it would be just something to try out. It's probably a safe assumption if they're just cloning them, but they're not exact clones as I say it out loud. So it may not be a safe assumption. But then he asks, I'd also like to know if you'll be testing the Long Island surf skates with the Genesis trucks. Really looking forward to that review. So let me give you my mini review on the Long Island Genesis truck real quick. In fact, let me go grab it. I just have it right here. So this is the Long Island Genesis Lean truck. And you can see how it looks somewhat similar to the Meraki, but the difference is there's bushings inside there, not a spring. So my bottom line take is this is if you've seen my article on the best surf skate trucks where I rank them, for surfers and non-surfers, I rank this as definitely a truck for surfers because I think it does not generate very much forward momentum at all. It's like riding a bike in first gear. It has a good feel to it, but unless I were a surfer doing surf training drills in small areas, I personally would have no interest in this system. But if that's what you do want to do, then I think it's a competitive, good feeling system. One of the big drawbacks to it is that the bushings, you have to look inside there, but they're proprietary half moon shaped bushings, which means that you can't change them out. And so like if you're familiar with the old Soul Ride that unfortunately went out of business recently, that was the big complaint that came out of those is my team riders started, one of my team riders, Laura, loved it, but her bushing started breaking on her. And had they been in business, I guess we still could buy from them. But when it's a proprietary bushing shape like that, it adds complications. You can't replace it unless it's from the company, and it's typically not going to be good urethane. And this is not good urethane on these bushings. It's like urethane. So you can't upgrade the bushings. And if you ever have any issues with them, then you have to, replace them from the company. So there's some drawbacks to it. But all in all, I'd say if you're a non-surfer, don't even think about it. If you're a surfer, you're going to like a Meraki much better anyway. So I don't know. I kind of, as I say it out loud, I'd have to check on their pricing. I don't know their price right now, but the only place I can see where they'd have a niche is where they're going to be a lot cheaper than a Meraki. So you could have kind of a similar feel to a Meraki, but it's cheaper. That's my quick and simple review on that. So there's Hayward's question. Robert, I have a Surfskate question for the international professional. I don't know if you're talking about me, but I wouldn't call myself that. I have an old deck, so I want to throw a set of the Carver CX trucks on it. Do you think 75 millimeters would fit? The website for Carver says they'd be compatible with 70 millimeter wheels, but I really want to put some big boys on. Yeah, you for sure can fit 75 millimeter wheels on Carvers. I think either C7 or CX, you're honestly fine. On 75 millimeter wheels with their standard, if you're using their standard risers. I don't think you might get, little nicks of wheel bite on a C7, but I think you'd be fine on a CX. They're super, I can't remember if it's the Super Surfer or the Super Slab actually comes stock with 75 millimeter Ecothane wheels. So yeah, you can ride 75 millimeter wheels on Carvers for sure. And if you are getting wheel bite, add a little bit of a riser. Paul says, I'm building a Surfskate, about a 37-inch Carver board. I'm using Carver CX trucks. This might be a little challenging of a question. Should I drill new holes for the trucks to accommodate my actual Surfskate stance, or simply utilize the stock mounting holes and suggestions? Suggestions, advice would be appreciated. Okay. If it were me, what you're describing is you're saying you have a 37-inch stock Carver board, 37 inches. I don't know when they ever made a 37-incher. I know their hot dogger was longer than the 777, but anyway. Bottom line is, if you're dealing with a Carver stock board, personally, I wouldn't drill holes. I'd replace the deck. But you could, and then you'd have two possible setups. But
let me clarify something on my Surfskate selector, because here's the thing. Really, my Surfskate selector is really just to help a newbie choose their first one. And it's really just to help you figure out your minimum wheelbase for each truck system, because after that, the sky's the limit. If you want to add to your quiver, then it's not like, when you get your answers out of the Surfskate selector, I'm not saying like that is your best and only ride. I'm just saying these are your best options to start with if you want to get something that's close to your stance width. But the reality is you can ride anything that has a wide enough wheelbase for your stance width, and they're all going to just have different feels. So it all just comes down to personal preference. So with the Surfskate selector, I'm just trying to give newbies who have never bought one some kind of a frame of reference to help them buy their first one. But once you get that first one, like I say, I'm not trying to, my focus on wheelbase and stance width isn't to try to constrain you to boards that only fit your stance width. It's just making sure you get the minimum wheelbase to fit your stance width, so you're not jackknifing the truck, so your front foot isn't over those front bolts. That's it, right? But you can build your quiver with as many as you want, as long as you have that minimum wheelbase width. So that's my answer. Is I personally wouldn't modify a wheelbase on a stock Carver deck. If I wanted to change the wheelbase, I would get a different deck. It's called the Carver Continental. It is just a 777 slight scale. I've never heard of that. Oh, sorry. Yes, it's the Bing Continental, of course. Duh. Yes. Duh. Yeah. Yeah. I for sure would not drill holes in that Continental if it were me. Yeah, exactly. Funking it up. Do you still use the Hackbrett board? I don't, Manuel, and I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, it's kind of an LDP. It is an LDP setup is how it rides. And if I'm going to do LDP, I'm going to ride my LDP setup now that it's a bracket board that's for that. But also it's kind of a pintail shape. And I personally am not the biggest fan of pintails on Surfskate trucks. So it's just not I love the deck and it works really, really well on CX. But it's just the profile of it is such that, like I say, it's an LDP setup. And if I didn't have an LDP setup in my quiver, I would use it for that. But since I do, I'm going to use my LDP setup. And that's why I don't ride it. Banana Pharma says, I found it to be a fantastic guide. Oh, you must be talking about the Surfskate selector. Gotcha. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I should probably do a better job of clarifying that for people that it's, people might think when you look at that Surfskate selector that it's too constraining or whatever. And that's not the case. I'm just trying to give beginners a frame of reference to start with. Okay, Paul said, I answered Paul's question, got that. And this is my last one here in my email inbox. And so I'll answer this one, and unless there's any other questions in the chat, we'll wrap it up here. This is a long email with a lot of questions in here. I think the first one is, I currently skate on Waterborne 62 millimeter 80A wheels and your Surfskate Love 65 millimeter 81A wheels. I see a lot of the transition experts skating on wheels in the 90A to 100A range. What do you think about this? Should I buy a set of much harder wheels, or should I buy some 82? They're actually 84A Surfskate Love wheels. Also, how does the width of this contact surface affect surf skating specifically? Okay, so yeah, if you're going to be serious about bull riding, then yeah, I do think that it's best for you to be on 90A or above. It depends on the formula. It depends on the wheels. My challenge personally with these harder wheels for bull riding on a surf skate is that when you pump side to side, you have that lateral side to side motion on a surf skate on your back wheels when you're pumping that you don't have on a surf skate or a skateboard or a longboard. So when I'm using like your typical skateboard wheels, I'll get that slide out feel a lot, which I don't like. And so, like those 64 millimeter dragons can be pretty slidey, for example. And so personally, I want something that has adequate grip such that when I'm pumping on a surf skate, I'm not going to be feeling my back wheels slide out. My park and bowl wheels that are coming out are 62 millimeters in diameter, 44 millimeters wide, 35 millimeter contact patch, and 93A durometer. And I actually wanted to go 96A durometer, and my formula is a very grippy formula, and so it would have supported a 96A just fine without slidiness. Unfortunately, my formula, there's something about it where the hardest durometer it can even be poured in is 93A. According to my manufacturer, what they say is it gets stuck to the mold and they can't get it out. Anything harder than 93A. So I'm maxed out at 93A on my wheels. But yeah, bottom line is if you're doing bull riding, yeah, I do think that you want to be harder. The ones that I've had great personal preference, it's all personal preference, but I personally like Powell Peralta rat bones a lot. They have them in 85A and 90A. I would go with the 90A for sure. So yeah, for bull riding, smaller and harder, it gives you quicker acceleration and faster speeds. My 64 millimeter 84A durometer wheels will work for bull riding, and I use them for bull riding, and they're great. In fact, Mark the Landlocked Surfer ranks them as one of his top favorite wheels, my 64 84s. But if me personally, if I've only been riding them because I don't have my new ones. But if I had my new ones, my 62 93As, I'd be riding those. So the advantage of the 65 84s would be they'd give you more versatility. You could do some street cruising with them and things like that, longer distances. But if you're wanting more of a pure bull wheel, yeah, smaller and harder. How does the width of the contacts affect surf skating? It affects a lot of things, but it affects your slide and grip. And so, if you want them to be slider, you want narrow wheels. If you want them to be grippier, you want them to be wider. Would be my. But it's not just width. Width is one aspect. There's so many other aspects. There's your durometer. There's your urethane formula. There's is it offset, center set, or side set, right? So that's just one factor of a lot, your width of the wheel. And his other question is about pumping form that I couldn't really answer verbally, so I'm not going to answer that here. Okay, final questions in we got a bunch of questions. Okay, what LDP bracket setup do you have? If you go to G-Bomb Longboard's website, it's one of their bracket boards. It's the Poppy with TTX rear or something, I think. But that's what it is. Widest deck in my quiver, Mr. J, is probably, I'm looking at, as I speak, a Hamboard's Fish. You got me curious now. It's probably 18 inches wide as I say it out loud. And then after that, I have a couple like that. Kahuna Creations one is 15 inches wide. There's a White Wave one that's like that. Kahuna Creations is 15 inches.
And then the ones like the Sector 9s are 11.25, and that's what mine's going to be, 11.25 at the widest point. Manuel, components, please. Well, if you just go to G-Bombs and look at his bracket setup, and then I'm just using, for wheels, I'm using Pantheon wheels. I have both sets, the Hokus and the Karmas. I've been riding the 102 millimeter Hokus, and I've just got a set of the 92 millimeter Karmas that I'm going to try. And then I use G-Bomb bearings, absolute best bearings money can buy. If you're asking me, they're amazing. Defrauding Charlatans asks, how come Kahuna creations aren't talked about a lot? I have no idea. I really like my long, what's it called? The Bombora. I have another one of theirs that I don't really like. So I don't know. I think they're just a small brand. I also think when you're selling longboard decks that big, there's not really a market for them, and they're an absolute nightmare to ship and fulfill. Logistics is just a nightmare on them, so they're just not very popular. That's my answer, but I don't really know. Red-Blooded Sky, why are you not a fan of slidey wheels for surf skates like the Snakes? Just because of what I said, just because I don't like to be pumping and then have my back wheels slide out. And I'm just not much of a slider anyway. That's just my personal preference. Okay, next question from Harvey. I'm weigh 215. Does a 95A Waterborne adapter bushing and 95A bushing rail adapter work for me? I bought the adapter with the stock bushing and it's too soft. Yeah, me too. I'd say I'm about 200 right now, and I definitely have to upgrade that stock bushing. I go with a Waterborne 97.5A is the hardest that you can get in that. They actually used to sell 100A, but it kept breaking, so they don't sell it anymore. But you can get a 97.5A, and that works great. Really transforms it from that stock bushing. And then for rail adapter, 95A to 215. Honestly, if it were me, I would try 92.5A rail adapter bushings at 215. So go with 97.5A green on the front and Prussian blue 92.5A on the rail adapter would be what I would recommend to you, Harvey. Funking it up says grip is really nice to not eat and break a few ribs. That's my reason. Yes, that's my reason too. Defrauding Charlatans. Do you feel Pantheon is better than Shark wheels? Oh, I don't like Shark wheels at all. Yeah, these. Well, first of all, I don't know. Does Shark wheels even make any LDP wheels that are over, say, 75 millimeters? I don't know that they have anything that even comes close to comparing to these Pantheon Hokus and Karmas, but they're massive. Here, let me show you. These are, that's a 102 millimeter wheel. That's the Pantheon Hoku that goes on my LDP setup. Here's a 65 millimeter wheel to give you. These are my new, the new yellow colors. The 84A will be this yellow color, but that's a 65 millimeter wheel to give you a comparison. But yeah, hard to get up to speed. But once you're up to speed, man, so much momentum there, so much fun. Yeah, I think Shark wheels are a gimmick. I didn't like them at all. I think they feel like crap, but that's just me. Defrauding Charlatans. You've been diving into this world for about 3 weeks. Oh man, I'm excited for you. You got a lot to dive into. There's so much to learn. It's so much fun. So I wish you all the best in your Surfskate journey, and I'm excited for you. Yeah. All right. Okay. I think that's the last of our questions, and we'll wrap it up here. Thanks so much for attending, everybody. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate your support. It means the world to me, and it's always great hanging out with friends. So stay tuned. You'll see me now. Like I say, the first Sunday of every month now at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on here, and shoot me, email me questions, and I'll save them, or otherwise just show up to these. But hopefully, I can answer as many questions as possible. So thanks everybody for your time, and we'll see you next month.